welcome back to React Roundup. I'm your host for today, Jack Harrington, and with me are my esteemed colleagues, Paige Niederinghouse.
Hello, everyone.
And TJ Van Tol.
Hey, everybody.
So glad to be back. It's really nice to go to Amsterdam and all that, but it's nice to be back and be with you guys for another episode. So today, we're going to do a very topical episode. It would be because Figma has just released this huge new change, which is amazing for a company that got acquired like a year ago or so by Adobe. And normally those companies just kind of wilt on the vine sort of thing after they get acquired. But they just blew the doors off with this huge new release that literally just completely flips the script on how we were doing the design flow. And if Figma is part of your process, I'm sure you have felt this. So it used to be, I would say, back in the day, the product manager and the developer would kind of get together, maybe whiteboard out some designs. Here's what it's going to look like. And then developer, Paige is shaking her head. Yeah, exactly. And, they would go through and build out, or you build out like a kind of, hey, this is it. And then the designer would come in and skin it, make it look good, maybe add some text, blah, 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 right? Yeah. And that completely with Figma has changed, right? Now it's like the PM, the product manager, and the designer get together and they build a high fidelity mockup that then it just kind of like it's on the developer who may sit in those meetings, may not, because it's a kind of combination of talking about how the product works and also like what the right shade of mauve is. And like after an hour, you're just like, oh my God, I can't handle this anymore. Please, God, stop. And then you kind of bail out and you're like, wait a second, but now I don't get any input into what the feature actually is. Ah, God. So, you get this thing at the end where it's like, it's kind of a half-baked feature, but it's really good,
Mm-hmm.
And from the product manager's perspective, they love it because then they can go and take that high fidelity mock and show it to their boss and say, hey, this is what you're going to have in like 2 months or whatever kind of thing. And it's a better cycle for them, but not a better cycle for us as developers, or at least it wasn't, because Figma used to have like what you got out of Figma was terrible. It's basically Photoshop. It was all, it's like everything is in pixels and blah, blah, and we don't work in pixels, doesn't handle responsive or anything. And yesterday, Figma had their big keynote where they went over this whole huge new feature called dev mode, where it literally is like a big old switch on the thing in dev mode, and the little like, chevrons and a slash to indicate, this is HTML now, that kind of thing, right? Although it does handle like more than HTML, it'll do like web and also iOS and also Android, blah, blah, blah. But they have simplified the interface for developers. So it's like you just look at what the actual finalized mock is. You can actually get deltas between like what the mock was yesterday and what it is today. So you know what changed. Woo, wow. Little things like that. And then the CSS has gotten so much better. They've actually put enough auto layout tools into Figma so that the newer designs can actually work like the web works, actually do like wrapping flex and responsive and all that sort of stuff. And they could actually generate that. And they partnered with a whole bunch of companies that will like connect that to developer tools. Like it'll go and generate out Tailwind and React for you as a starting point, and even like integrate it into your VS Code. So it is like unbelievable, like a whole paradigm shift in how we are going to do development from here on out. So, if Figma is part of your process.
Wow.
Jack, I have to stop you first and say that was a glowing review. Have you tried this, or
yes,
are you basing this off the keynote?
No. I tried it last night, and I've been talking to like the folks over at Chromatic. They do Storybook, and they are just like, oh my God, this is so good. I what can I say? I used to work at Macromedia back in the day, like 10 years ago, when that became Adobe and that acquired Figma. So if you do some like weird like guy in front of a whiteboard thing, you might think Jack's in their pocket. I really have nothing to do. Like I just think it's good. Like and at the end of the day, I think it would, if you are a front end developer and you've been kind of like thinking of Figma as like a pain in your butt, now's the time to twist your thinking into you should learn Figma so that you can get back into that process so that if you get a design that's like very, very good looking, but not really implementable because they're missing a couple of fields, or you don't have the right data at the right time, or that feature actually requires 100% perfect AI, you can actually go and make those changes yourself and get back into that design flow and say, hey, I love your design, but here's something that actually we can actually implement, and then let it help you implement it. I think it's good.
Yeah, I only raised some skepticism because it sounds like a familiar pitch that I've heard before. A lot of these sort of design tools have posed themselves as like, well, this is a tool for designers, but look, here's the developer tab or whatever.
Right.
Or here's
Yep.
the like, I've used tools
Yeah.
that'll like export a React component or have some functionality like that. And it sounds good on a marketing website, but then you actually go to try it and you look at what it outputs and you go,
It doesn't
well,
work.
no, I'm gonna
Agreed.
I'll just throw
Totally
this out.
agreed.
And
Although I will say, I think you give it a little give in both directions here, because I think what we've been looking for is something that like, hey, we use Material, we use Chakra, we use one of those design systems or something like that. Give us that design implemented in Material, and it's not going to do that. It doesn't. It doesn't understand that, and it's never going to do that. What it will do is they've effectively gone to where they're skating to where the puck is. And because of RSCs and all that sort of stuff, we're getting away from that. We're actually moving towards like Shad CN on top of Radix, which is like literally just copy and paste Tailwind. And so you're going to get pretty soon here code bases that are tons and tons and tons of Tailwind or Tailwindy type or components built on top of Tailwind, that kind of thing. So like both things are moving in parallel here, and it's kind of hard to track, but I do think that they're going more towards the future as opposed to where we are now. And so if components have been your thing, like, oh, I'm really bought into Material or whatever, I think that's old school thinking going into the next couple of years.
So do you think that the component libraries that still exist are going to need to exist? Do you think that there's still going to be a place for ant design and Material and, those different things? Or do you think it's going to be, if Figma can generate any component that you want in the syntax that you need, or is that going to be a thing of the past?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe a thing of the past. The question, I guess, from your experience, how much have you really stuck to those design systems? Like, really?
I think it really depends on the team. Like when I was working for Home Depot, we went from basically all the development teams choosing their own design system if they had one, or home growing all of their own components, to everybody must use ant design or Material design. There were like 3 that you could choose from. And for the most part,
and they had skins for each one.
Yeah, they had the color palette that was the same across all teams. It was standardized, so things like that existed.
Gold,
but yeah,
orange and black.
Orange, a lot of orange, a lot of black, a lot of
orange,
white.
Yeah.
But it was good because it didn't matter so much what tools you were working with. You could expect a similar user flow, or you could expect that if I click this button, it will do this thing, or it will open this tab or whatever. So in that regard, I think it made things a lot more standardized, and it made it a lot easier to build tools that, multiple different departments were using, or different people within the company were using in tandem with other tools. So in that regard, it was great. Now where TJ and I work, it's a lot less standardized, and it's because we have a lot less sites. So it's much more, the sites have their own flavors and their own kind of styling. We still have prescribed fonts and color schemes and things like that, but it's a lot more
to the style guide.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we've talked about putting in a component library, but we haven't.
Yeah, I just find like when we have component libraries everywhere I've worked, it's always like, oh, that's the standard such and such button, but And then it's like, like, but it's also kind of goopy and it has weird edges and all this other stuff. And that's at the moment that they say but, you're like, oh my God, oh no, kind of like,
yes.
Yeah. So like it was a design system, but we were constantly breaking the design system. And that's the thing about go on.
I mean, that is,
you
just described a lot of my experiences to a T. It's like, I like this, but the margin's not quite right. The padding's not quite right. I don't like how it wraps the text. If you could put more, X, Y, Z in here, and suddenly you've completely broken the component. You don't understand why it's not formatting correctly in some other spot on the site. And when you start to strip away the extra CSS that you've added to make it do something special, suddenly it starts to work again. But getting the designers to understand that we're breaking what has already been built is so difficult or impossible.
Yeah, and I think the value of a lot of this is that it's bringing designers closer into development. They actually, there's even more features that I didn't even get in there. Jeez. Like another feature is you literally like now they understand that a button is a button. Yay. Okay. And now they're like a component playground where literally they have all the variables for the button, everything, all the props that would go to your React component. And you can literally just like, oh, I want the outlined variant. Oh, I want the such and such variant. And this is all in Figma. And then, when you generate it, you literally generate a button that has those props, right? And it's just like, there's so many features that oh my God, you just have to watch the keynote. It's amazing. But yeah, so that will move designers into this world of, oh, I understand that we have a component system, as opposed to like always thinking about a component system as this kind of ethereal, weird thing that like it gets in the way of my creativity kind of thing,
Yeah, and the part that I've always liked about Figma, or at least the things I think they've done the best, is encouraging the communication between the designers and the developers as well, because I've also been a part of workflows in the past where it was very much just like a handoff situation. Like the decree comes
Make it work.
This is the UI. Like this is it.
Make it so.
It has been sent from above. Here it is. It is yours to implement. And
it's a drag, right? I mean, why did we get into this? We got into this because we enjoy working with people and making cool stuff, right? That's why we're front end engineers in large part, because we enjoy that process. And now we're kind of extricated from that process, and it's like, here it is. Here's your UI. Make this thing, and it's like, oh, that's no fun. I don't like that.
I will say too that this feels like one of the harder bits about switching to more remote work too, because honestly, the design stuff is one of the things that is far nicer to do in person, where you can have a whiteboard, you can walk over to someone's desk and say like, here's this thing. It's just the visual nature of everything you're doing is you can do it over Slack calls, Zoom calls, whatever, but it's far more convenient to just have everybody in a room with a whiteboard and a big screen and just to hash these things out and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
And that's what product managers and designers are doing today, but they're doing it in Figma. And by not knowing how to work in Figma, developers are leaving themselves out of that whiteboard conversation because they're not on the whiteboard.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's vital because that's the other thing is you have to be able to raise the concerns of, I think something that has remained true over all of these design tools is that people that are pure designers still have a hard time translating that into what is difficult and what is hard from a development point of view, because sometimes they'll do things that they'll think is hard that are actually trivial, and vice versa.
Yes,
right? Like come up with something like, oh, well, can't you just, and then like the developer in you goes like, oh my God, no, because I need to get that data from 4 different database tables. Right. I can never load it on by default. Right. And you have all this in your head, but like, that's the fundamental divide that some of these tools help address. Because you want to be having those conversations earlier rather than like, oh, now we're a week from the deadline and you're seeing this and this comes up.
Yeah, exactly.
The earlier you can be in those conversations and raise those is better.
So
Yeah,
one thing
Paige.
that I wanted to ask about is you said that you can say, okay, I need a primary button that is a solid color with some text. And I also need the secondary button, which is just an outline with a different color of text. So is that, if that is something now that Figma can do, that makes me wonder, is something like Storybook still necessary? Or has Figma just taken what Storybook used to be for, which was all the variations and the props and the, when you click the button, it does this, or this is how an error state looks. So has that just been eliminated? The need for
Wow.
both?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I would literally just, it's like, it was a guy from Storybook who
Mm-hmm.
pinged me on LinkedIn yesterday and was like, are you listening to the keynote? I'm like, what keynote? I don't know, whatever. He's like, the Figma keynote. And I'm like, and it's because I talked to him in Amsterdam, I'm like, this is a huge pain point. Like getting from design into a component is this huge deal. AI, they're trying to do all this AI stuff and it doesn't work. I mean, I mean, totally in the TJ camp of like, it's just bogus. Nobody's figured this out. And he's sitting there on this knowledge of like, no, actually Figma has totally, they've got this dev mode, has been in private beta for a while, but I can't tell you about it kind of thing. Obviously, whatever. And he says that they've done a whole bunch of work. That was actually one of the folks that they partnered with was Chromatic. They're the Storybook folks. And he said that they've potentially got even a lot more in the back, waiting to go. So I don't know what that is. I think you're totally right. I think there's another company, I think Zeppelin. Zeppelin's whole thing was they would sit on top of Figma and then they would curate what production was. I think they're gone. They're toast. Like there's no need for them anymore. So at least that I know of, that was Zeppelin's only bag. I think that's gone. But whatever.
Yeah, we were trying to build a tool like this at Progress while I was there, and I'm pretty sure that is now also gone. Maybe not, but it was one of those things too where like we were responding to, there's still an obvious need for this. Like the problem is very real, but I think the reason there's so many of this is nobody knows exactly what the silver bullet or what the correct way of doing it. Because Storybook to me is still, I would still prefer to use that. Like I wouldn't trust Figma as a developer, and maybe that's just me, right? But Storybook is more like I can integrate that into my code directly.
Yeah.
I can have that run as part of my testing process. I can make changes in my React component and have like a tab open where it's rendering with all these variations. And I wouldn't trust Figma to do that. Maybe Figma's heading in that direction, but I'd want something that just runs completely in my local environment with all my tooling and such that I'd want to rely on.
Yeah, I think another thing that they showed off during the keynote, I mean, just crazy amounts of volume of information, was that you can actually adorn like stuff in Figma with links to GitHub or Storybook or whatever. So, I mean, it's basically there, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
So we have been using Adobe XD for our designs at work. And since Adobe owns Figma, is there any easy way to move those designs to Figma that you know of?
To be honest, I have never used Adobe XD. I don't even know what is it?
It's the Adobe version of Figma. Your designer has the mock-up and then they start putting new content on the page. And here's your new blog layout, or here's your new landing page homepage design. It's a very high definition. Well, ours end up being high definition. I'm sure you could do more bare bones skeletons, but ours end up being very high definitions of what our website looks like. And then here's the new feature, the new page that we're adding to it. Here's how it should look. Here's interactions that it should have. Here's your main state, and then here's your hover state where all the links are highlighted, or the little copied link is showing off, or whatever. So it's just it's another version of Figma, basically.
So, but Adobe owns Figma.
I know.
Well, they
very confused,
right? Exactly. I'm confused.
The history here is XD was losing massively to Figma. So Adobe's solution to it was just, well, let's just buy Figma then, because we have billions of dollars in the bank. So we can just make this competitor go away.
Yeah. I mean, maybe eventually XD will go away and it will all become Figma or vice versa.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we need to get a Adobe executive on the podcast and
good luck with that.
Drill them on their corporate strategy.
Yeah, that's never gonna happen. Well, I mean, they would give you the. I actually have a friend who works over at Figma, and he's kind of cagey about it. Like he's like, oh, he drifted some little thing on LinkedIn about developers and Figma, and I'm like, kind of back channeled. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, nothing. I was just kind of curious. I'm like, oh, now I'm looking at it like, oh my god, come on, I'm like, you guys are whatever. So yeah, XD. I don't know. Does it allow you to do things other than the web, or than the web and like or UIs or things like that? Or
I've only ever seen it in a web centric way, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we don't design or build typically desktop based apps, like Electron based anything. So we've only seen it used for website type of stuff. I'm trying to think though if there's anything else that I've seen it used for. I know that I don't remember if it was Adobe or if it was some other design tool. It might have been Figma or something that actually had animations so that you could interact with elements on a page and see, this is what a button looks like when it's clicked, or this is how it should animate and expand this drawer or things like that. But yeah, I can't think if I assume it could be. It seems like a very flexible tool, and whatever you would want to design for it, you could, but it's very UI focused. So if you just had something that was purely an API or a back-end type of system, you'd never use Adobe for it. You would just use it to skin like the login page, and then somebody else would build the interface.
I'm just thinking, like, if you want to make a pamphlet or a page for a literal, like a physical 8.5 by 11 page. I don't know whoever does that anymore. To actually, can you do that in InDesign and or in XD? I know you can do it in InDesign. The other thing is like Adobe. I don't know if you have. I have an Adobe
license.
Creative Cloud.
Yeah. The Creative Cloud, the subscription. I got like the big one. There's an unbelievable amount of apps in there. Like it's like there's like 80 apps.
Yeah.
I think, knowing what I know about Adobe, that like really XD honestly is a play to say it's a good enough tool that before Figma existed, that it'd be an incentive to get people on Creative Cloud. And then once, because that's really all Adobe cares about. It's kind of like, why would you use Microsoft Teams? Well, if you're paying for Office 365, you're paying for Teams. So even if it's not as good as Slack, if it's
or Zoom,
free or included, why not? Right? I think XD is sort of the same thing.
What blows me away about Teams is they're always adding these new features when you're like, all I want you to do is get Markdown right. But it's no. We'll give you like automatic, meeting transcription. Oh, great. Thanks. Can you get Markdown
Here's theater mode.
Oh, no.
So your whole team looks like they're in a theater.
Right. And it's like, but can I get like a decent code snippet in a message? No, but we can give you like sentiment recognition inside of your meeting. So it will tell you later if you're being passive aggressive or not.
Yeah.
Like what? I needed this. Why? Jack, you're being passive aggressive.
Teams. Thing about Teams for me is I never thought it was that good at chat, which like that's the thing.
That's terrible.
It was like,
just get that right.
Yeah. Just like, I don't know.
I remember
sending. Yeah.
I remember having Teams, but also using Skype for Business to actually chat with somebody at work. Like, we had 4 different things open at the same time.
God.
Yeah.
So bad. Just use Discord. Discord's the best. It really is. It just works.
I really
know
like
it's
Slack,
GG gamer thing, but like,
I gotta say,
really, okay. It's better than Teams, but then that's not saying much. That's like saying that like this on fire dumpster is far better than that on fire going across the water dumpster. Sorry, Teams guys, you know the deal.
Okay, so let me ask you, since you've got the Creative Cloud, Jack, does Figma
Sure.
actually come bundled with it, or is that a separate subscription
I don't
purchase,
know.
whatever?
Actually, that's a really good question. I
This
do
is why
not
we do need
know. I'm
to book some
literally like
Adobe
looking at apps right
executives here.
now. Oh my God. What is it? 3D and AR? Really?
Nice. Augmented reality with
Substance
Adobe.
3D assets? What is this? Mixamo? I don't even what animate 3D characters for games, film, and AR experiences? What is this?
Ooh.
What? Turn your photos into editable 3D materials. I can do that? Cool. I don't even have like, yeah, okay. I don't know. It's not in the top list of things, but it's free. There's like you can get on there for free, and then there's like the premium packages and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
They do not mention the word Adobe on their website or pricing anywhere. I think they seem to be trying to distance themselves from the Adobe
mothership,
at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come to think of it, when I was watching the keynote, there was no Adobe branding at all. It was all like the weird Figma kind of thing, and yeah, it's like never happened. It's like, oh, I guess new corporate daddy is Adobe. That's where the money comes from. Nothing else.
GitHub and Microsoft, where we never see anything Microsoft related on GitHub, but we know they're owned by them.
Yeah, totally. Although I would expect at least that I could log into my Adobe account on Figma. That would be nice. Can't do that.
They still, on Figma's website, there's still a Figma versus Adobe XD marketing page. So
womp womp.
That's very funny.
They didn't make them take that down.
Apparently not.
I will say, I think I would imagine if because I having worked at Macromedia, which became Adobe. I mean, these are huge companies back then. And, thousands of developers and that sort of stuff. The fact that they were able to do this is just mind blowing. It is so hard to because I'm absolutely sure there are folks who were at the literally developer number 5 at Figma who are still there today, who are like, we are building a pure design tool for the web. And now that they've got this developer flow, they're like, this is not Figma. This is not ever what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for making a UI builder. This sucks. And those people are probably in power positions. And you got to fight that to actually say, hey, you know what? Actually, you know what? 99% of the time, people are using Figma to build a web UI, to build iOS, to build Android. That's our market. That's what we are. And to acknowledge that and to say, hey, we're going to go and tweak the tool so that it works better for developers. That was I'm sure some people put their futures on the line at the company for that. And it'll be
Figma too is kind of fascinating because the whole code base is like C++, Rust, basically, and they use WebAssembly to get it to work in the browser
and Canvas.
And so it's just a fascinating architecture.
Oh yeah.
And I'm surprised there's not more of that, but it's interesting because it helps explain why it's successful, just because it works. It's so fast in the browser. Whereas so many tools like this that I've used in the past just feel so clunky. Because we love JavaScript, that's why we're here, but when you scale up to absurd scale which is needed to build something, to have something like Figma running in the browser, it's hard, very hard to keep that running efficiently and well.
And I've seen massive pages, you basically have the entire app, with all the lines and the blah 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 connecting all of it. And you can just zoom in, zoom out, navigate all over. And even on old commodity hardware, it's snappy. You never hear the fan whir or anything. It's a miracle of engineering, at least at that level. Yeah. I do think I think the all the nav and all the toolbars and all that sort of stuff that sit on top of the canvas, I think that's all React actually.
I think you're right. I think that the core of it is just the core hardest part of the rendering is all basically native code.
lower level
It was
languages.
It's amazing to hear how far React has gotten. I actually talked with one of the folks over at Meta when I was in Amsterdam about like they have a really good relationship now with Microsoft. I'm like, wait, Microsoft? What? What do you? Why do they care? And they're like, oh no, actually, they're using like React Native on Windows, on the Xbox. Like they use a lot of React at Microsoft. And it's like, whoa, that's cool. Like, yeah, Microsoft is a huge player in React Native.
I believe Teams was rewritten in React also.
Oh, that doesn't sound good. That's not right. Ouch.
So one thing
bringing back
I'm
libraries from
We have to
Markdown.
fact check it.
Yeah, while TJ fact checks that, you said that one of the things that they touted for the new version of Figma was being able to say, I want this to be a Vue component, or I want this to be a React component, or something like that. Is that something that Figma is actually doing, or is that something that some intermediary library that translates plain HTML and CSS or whatever Figma's using into a particular syntax or flavor of component?
It was when I played with it last night, it was a plugin.
Okay.
Like a first party, well, not first party, I guess a third party plugin. Let me see where my. Okay, come here. Here you go. Oh, there, Whitespace UI. That was the one I was playing with, and I was literally like looking at a button or something like that, and trying to see if it would make it. And it was a third party kind of thing. But what they've done is, am I in developer mode now? I don't even know. Like, is it green developer mode? This is okay. Design mode. Switch to dev mode. I'm in dev mode now. And then I can like go and scroll down. I think I can get like the code for this. But it was a third party thing. I get what they've done, which is good, is they basically added enough metadata, I would say, to all of the design, so that now it's not like, oh, this is a roundy rectangle. It's like, no, this is a button.
Okay.
And so there's enough metadata in the design to where you can effectively code generate it and do it right. Ish enough, right? Enough to create React components that have the right stuff. But I'm pretty sure that the older like kits or whatever, because they don't have that metadata in them, they're not going to work. So this is going to be one of those things where it's going to take a little while for it to actually, like, older code, older kits, all that sort of stuff. That's not going to, it's not going to understand what to do with those. But hey, that's the nature of things, I guess.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Plugins. Oh, there we go. Never really a great interface. Oh, there we go. Figma to React Native. Component Inspector. Storybook Connect. There you go. Yeah, all kinds of good stuff. Oh, and Jira. Great.
Oh.
Jira integration. Yay.
Yeah. That's what everyone needs.
Everybody's favorite.
You're a real business, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody loves moving those tickets from open to closed.
I think if you have that on your feature list, though, you're like 100% more likely to get a CTO to buy.
Oh, totally.
Like, it doesn't even matter if the feature does anything, right? It just looks really great.
Yeah. Will it integrate with my burn down chart? That's the important thing. Because damn it, the burn down chart is what sells the product. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
The points do matter.
Features sell the product. Yeah, sure. Okay.
So do we have any other, talking to design developments, do we have any other tips for people, like in terms of just design workflows, anything we've been a part of in our careers that we think have worked really well, or vice versa, things that have been nightmares? Any tips for developers out there in their day-to-day?
One thing that I remember that was useful was when I was a dev team lead, I would have I think it was a biweekly meeting with my product manager, and my designer, and the designer would show us the new mock-ups that they were working on for whatever new features were going to come into the backlog in the next week or two. And it was a great opportunity to say, this is not going to work, or this is going to be extremely hard to implement.
Right.
So if you have the opportunity to work closely with your PM and your designers and kind of get almost a sneak peek or a heads up of what's coming, that can save everybody a lot of heartache and gnashing of teeth further down the line. If you can kind of be able to say, hey, I see where you're going with this. And while it looks cool and the interaction is really nice and the users might like it, it's going to be a beast for us to actually make this happen. Maybe there's another way, and you can, brainstorm other ways to do it that might be less of a lift for the dev team.
Absolutely. I think what's worked for me in the past is on the launch of a new feature, like, oh, we're going to do this new thing, right? And to have as part of the process a time where devs or at least dev leads and design leads and PMs, you're working like in Figma, sure, but you're not working with the high res stuff. You're working with like more of the pencil drawing type layout things, and they are specifically unstyled so that nobody argues about the styling and the fonting and all that sort of stuff. And then you just kind of work out the flow. It's like, hey, we're going to have this page. It's going to talk to that page. It's going to talk to that page. This page has the data, blah, 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 blah. And that, if you can get that going, that may be a rough 2-hour meeting or whatever, but like that, then as that moves into design, then you're not going to get into the issue which Paige is talking about, where it's like, oh, you guys went off and you designed something that like has zero chance of actually ever being implemented because it's insane, but it's beautiful.
It's impossible.
Right? It's impossible, but it's gorgeous. It's going to be, you're going to have a lot more likelihood of actually getting something that's actually going to be a design that's going to work. And I think the designers are going to be happy because it's like, oh, my creativity is there, but it's constrained a little bit. And I don't really need to necessarily understand all the ins and outs of this particular business. Because that can be hard, I would say, like, not everybody needs to know everything about IoT as an example, or what an IRQ is, or, that kind of stuff that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as developers, we try to avoid meetings, just like as a general statement, but this is one of those situations where it's kind of important to get involved early, because I think the flip side of this though, too, because I was going to say that I also have had to try to not be too, I guess, picky about designs either. Like, so as a developer, our role is kind of to go in and say, this is doable, this isn't, or at least say like how hard this is going to be to implement, red flags. It is not really our role to pick the best blue for the website, right? Or the spacing. So I've tried to catch myself, because design is a place where everybody has opinions. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be in any role whatsoever. You have thoughts about the colors, the looks, the fonts, and whatever. But I try to keep my critiques of different things to more black and white type of things. And well, not the, black and white, maybe the wrong metaphor here, but to the objective things rather than the subjective, like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Because designs can also get bogged down if you have 8 people in that meeting, and then the very important VP or whatever comes in and says like, that blue looks bad, right? And then I can just throw everything off altogether. Right. So I try to be cognizant of that. That's like, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have an opinion, right? Like, but make sure to just, if you're discussing something trivial, make sure you say that, like, this, I'm just throwing this out there. You can take it or leave it, whatever. Because you also don't want to bog down the design process either.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of look at my role as more like a last part gatekeeper to like, oh, the contrast on that is crazy low. Wait, we can't ship that. Or that font size is way too small. That's way below alley. Because I mean, designers tend to have really good eyesight, and they think that like 8-point font is like totally acceptable, and you're like, no, that's not okay. Like, or the 0.08 contrast thing where it's like a light gray on a white, and you're like, come on, I can, that's crazy. But I will say that you mentioned like the bad feeling parts. I don't like to be the bad guy, and I think that's If your process turns developers, makes your role as a developer, as a person who says at the end, oh, we can't do that, or oh, that's going to take forever, or something like that, you sound like the bad guy. You sound like the naysayer. You're just in a bad position. And so, try to make sure that whatever the process is, that you are involved enough where you can at least kind of stop that stuff at the pass, where you don't end up having to be the bad guy at the very end who's like, no, or why did you make a 5 blob thing where you click on a blob to set the volume when you could have just made a slider, or something that's actually accessible that people understand. That's one thing I find kind of funny is when people for whatever reason they're just like, oh, I just want to make some new novel interaction mechanism, and you're like, that's not good. Like as a user, like when I get on my exercise bike and I'm setting like the duration or something like that, I don't want to set it by like blob. I want to set I want it to be text. I want to be here for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, right? I don't have to think about it. It's like,
it's
simple is better.
It's funny. The part that resonated with me most of all is it's amazing how much designers love small text. That's the one thing that's been
I know,
a constant
It's
throughout
true.
my career.
Oh
I don't
my
know what it
God.
is. Maybe it's that they're trying to fit stuff in a certain space, right? And that the small text helps do that. But I swear, over and over again, I've had to just flag, like, you realize that this is like impossible to read, or
Right.
like this is not going to work. It's a weird phenomenon.
I don't think they like text. I just don't think text is a fun thing to put on a site.
It ruins the layout. It always does.
Yeah. And when in reality, what really hurts customer interaction or user interaction is like the length of text. Like if you got like 3 paragraphs of expository stuff about like, and then it's got an okay cancel at the bottom, you're like, I'm never going to read that. I don't know what that is, kind of thing. Where it's like, just try and keep try and keep everything to a sentence or less, or a sentence. I mean, there's nothing less than a sentence, I guess. So whatever. But keep it brief.
The other tip that comes to mind, and this is more like UX design than really developer feedback, but when you are reviewing mockups, keep in mind that you probably have more knowledge of the system than your average user does. So lots of times it's good to get another pair of eyes. My wife's here. I've dragged her into this a lot. She kind of hates, but it can be just somebody else at your company, right? Even if they work in a different department, division, team, whatever. But there's a good chance that you understand this UI more than your average user coming into your system does. So it's always worth keeping that in mind too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in like a tangential field.
And that's something that especially in larger companies, your UX team probably does user interviews, which is great. They'll show them mock-ups. They'll have a little bit of interaction to them. They'll ask them, how would I do X, Y, and Z given that you have this layout? And that is so revealing about how people have no clue how your UX designer was thinking it would work, or the development team even was thinking it would work. And then the user is in a completely different part of the screen, clicking around on stuff that is not interactive. So if you have the ability to do that sort of thing, you should absolutely take advantage of it, because it'll show you a lot.
And it's a good sign if you're working at a company that has those processes and procedures. That's a good thing. That's a good sign.
Yes. All right. So one final question, Jack, since you've brought it up a couple of times, is if you're a developer and you don't work in Figma, how would you get started learning about how to use Figma?
I think it's free. So just create an account. It's got the usual sort of OAuth kind of connections to Google and blah, 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 blah. So it's pretty easy to get started. I actually don't know. It's a pretty brutal interface, actually. I gotta say, like, you can just kind of get you literally hit like new design, and it's just literally like, white canvas, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are templates out there. this is actually going to be something I'm going to have to learn, because I mean, I honestly think that at a certain point, it's going to be so integrated where it's going to be like a dialogue editor within VS Code. Like there's going to be a tab that's like you're literally like, oh, I'm looking at this widget, or this component, and I can click on a different view, and it's going to be Figma, and I can just move around, and it's going to change the underlying HTML or React Native or whatever it is. So, you know, but I got to say, like, it's just kind of weird. Like, I don't know, like it doesn't feel very good. Like it's not like a dialogue designer from, I don't know, VS Code, Visual Basic days, right? Which is kind of like the last time I remember like dragging and dropping like that sort of stuff.
It's a hard tool to use as a developer unless you're already using it at your company, because what'll happen is you'll sign up for that Figma account and then you'll be looking at a blank canvas and you'll be like, okay, now what do I do? Whereas if your company's already using it, you'll log in and you'll see a design, and then that makes it far more real. And you can start poking with it. You can see how the commenting system works, how you can try to get code or information out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd recommend people just hop into it, just because you're just going to be staring at a screen and not know really what to do. You can poke around just for sheer interest. I think it's probably worth taking 30 minutes to just play around, but I don't think it's going to be real for you unless it actually gets implemented into whatever design flow you're using at your work.
There are templates though. I mean, there for all the basic design systems, like there are templates, and you can start with those.
And that's kind of what I was hoping for, was, you know, how so many different frameworks now and the web give us kind of like a starter project, that there be some starter template that you can just go in and say, here's a button, or here's an input, or here's a drop down, you know, fiddle around with it, export it, see what happens when you change it. How do you change it? That kind of thing. But it sounds like it's just, here's a blank screen, go wild.
I do know, like when I was still at Progress with Kendo UI, and one thing they still have is they have design kits for Figma, because they kind of recognize Figma's popular enough now that if you're going to use our components, your designers are also going to want to design with our components. So I know frameworks, if Kendo UI has it, I imagine a bunch of the other popular ones have that now. So that also might be a reasonable starting point. Like Material probably, like if I Google
Material definitely has their own, it has their own kit.
Figma. Okay.
Lots of them have their own. I think any reasonable frameworks that have its own kit. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I guess I would expect, I don't know, as a developer, I kind of always expect it that, like, when you say kit to me, it's going to be a right-hand panel or left-hand panel full of like button. I just grab the button, put it on the page, you know, that sort of thing. And it's like, no, that doesn't, it's not that. It's like you have your design kit is basically a big old page, and you kind of like copy and paste, I think. Just like, okay, I'm going to go scroll down to where the button section is located, grab a button that I like, copy that, go back up to where I was before, paste it. And it's just like, what is that? Like, but I guess, you know, people like it, so designers like it. So there you go. Just seems cluttered to me.
Material UI actually charges for their Figma kit, which is very interesting. That must be, they must see it as a way to generate revenue, which makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a company that uses Material UI daily, I mean, you should definitely buy the Pro so you get the grid. But, you know, maybe it's a good, I mean, they live off that stuff. Like that's the way they make money. So if you want them to be around, you know, you should probably pay that.
Yeah, it's a pretty good model. Keep your like JavaScript components free, but then charge for the stuff that you need for like
a really good date picker, a really good grid. And they've got like, you can get a basic grid, but if you want like the in place, I don't know what the features are, but like the massive like filtering, sorting, blah, 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 expert level stuff. Then you get the Pro, you know, that's cool. That's fine. Shall we do picks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sounds good. So, TJ, why don't you start off with picks this week?
Sure. So I'm going to pick Breath of the Wild, which
Ooh.
is the first Zelda game for the Switch. So the new one is Tears of the Kingdom, which came out fairly recently.
Yeah. Why did you pick that one?
Which so it's the new one is a sequel, right? So it encouraged me to finally get around to playing the original one, which is now like 5 or 6 years old or whatever. That was on my like, oh, I should play this list for forever. So finally got around to doing it. It's a good game. And I held off because the sort of big open world games are typically not my thing because
Right.
it's like I don't have time anymore to play a game where I'm like get immersed in a world and go explore. But even given that, like my prejudice against those sort of games, I still had fun. It's open world, but you can kind of just like go straight to the dot where they want you to go and do that too. So I had fun playing through it, and probably gonna play the sequel now next.
Like one of the best
Nice.
apparently video games ever, you know. So.
Yeah. I've heard so many good things
Can't go
about
wrong.
it.
All right, Paige, what you got?
My pick this week is going to be for the final season of Ted Lasso, which is an Apple TV series. It is about a football coach, an American football coach who goes to coach for a team in England, and they are a soccer team. So, you know, the hilarity ensues because he knows nothing about the game of soccer. But the thing that I think is so great about it is even if you don't care at all about sports and sports dramas, you'll fall in love with this show because of the characters and how they relate to each other and the world around them. The third season, which is the final season, just wraps it all up so well. I don't think I have cried as much as I did in the last couple of episodes.
Oh my God. Yes.
Happy tears. But yeah, you should definitely check it out. It's worth subscribing for a month to get Apple TV and just binge through it because it's an amazing series. And I would highly recommend it to anybody to watch. It's so good. So good.
Apple TV's on a roll. They really are.
Yeah.
I mean, they got Silo now. Silo's really good. Fascinating world. Interesting that it's different than the books. Like I read all the books after like the episode 1 came out. Totally different. Yeah, just such good stuff coming out there.
Yeah.
So my pick for the week is going to be Monkey Type. It's a typing tutor tool that will kind of keep you stretched out when it comes to your exercise, when it comes to your typing. So my daughter blows the doors off of my typing. It's crazy. She goes like 120 words per minute or whatever at like 100%. Like, geez, I don't even know. But it's good because it'll get, you'll understand your keyboard a little bit better and all that good stuff. So definitely fun.
Nice.
I'm trying to like every day I do a little Monkey Type. Cool. Well, this has been really fun, y'all. We should do this again.
Definitely.
Yeah, this is fun. Sorry, I got distracted by Monkey Type. I'm already all in.
I know, dude.
Checking it out.
You can change the theme. You can track your progress. I'm not improved, by the way. I've sort of stabilized, but I've stabilized at a level that I like. So I'm okay with that. Just keep me there, and I'm good.
They have a store. This is
yeah. You can get like Monkey Type swag. Yeah. Do you guys home
merch?
Like do you do the whole thing where you home on like ASDF, JKL,
I try to,
and then you start typing?
Yeah, it works pretty well for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you not?
I've been typing since I was like 12, so no, not really. I mean, I kind of like I start off homed because like I had a literal typing teacher when I was in school. It was like crack the knuckles sort of thing. Like you start on home, and then I just invariably just like immediately go into like hunt and peck. Yeah.
I had the same typing. I had a typing teacher in middle school that like same sort of cracked the whip, but for me it stuck. I was traumatized into doing it. So
yeah,
we had one where they put a little like almost like a thing over your keyboard so that you couldn't see your hands while you were doing typing.
Yeah, that's evil.
So that really got you to learn where the keys were.
Oh my God,
it worked pretty well.
I bet. Jeez. Okay. Wow. All right. Man, I don't want to go to your school. Yeah, I'm so old that like it was Selectrics when I was learning, and that would they had the old typing, like old typewriters, and they would have this kind of whirring sound. So like everybody would light those things up, and man, it was like, and then bang, 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 like machine gun fire. Like if we had Apple Watches back then, I swear to God, it was an hour of 90 decibels. Like it was, I don't know how we got through that.
No backspace key.
Oh no. Lord, no! Oh, was it whiteout? Yeah. You got the whiteout. It was terrible. Oh my God. Okay, well that's been fun. I expect to see your scores in our DM later.
All right, yeah, okay. I've got it open. I'm ready to go.
Okay,
although it said
it
so popped up a thing that said AFK detected. So I've got a
nice.
I don't know if that ruined me for the
Well, that's because
or...
you interacted with it, and then you were supposed to start typing, and you didn't type. So
I'll go to a private tab and try again.
Okay. See you next week, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Until next
See
week.
you then.
All right. See you then. Bye.